Hi guys, welcome to Punish for Protecting our live today. We actually have today Michael Volpe. I'm very excited to have him on. I need my readers for this. Michael is a freelance investigative journalist since 2009. He had spent a decade in finance. His work has been published locally in the Chicago Reader, Chicago Crusader, Chicago Heights Patch, and New City. Nationally, Volpe's work has appeared in a wide variety of publications, including the Washington Examiner, the Daily Caller, Crime Magazine, the Southern Christian Leadership Conference newsletter, and Counterpunch. Volpe has been recognized by whistleblowers as leading the charge in getting their stories out. So we like this type of a journalist. His first book, Prosecutors Gone Wild, was published in October 2012. His second book, The Definitive Dossier of PTSD in Whistleblowers, was published in February of 2013. And his third book, Bullied to Death, was published in 2015. I'm going to introduce you guys now to our guest, Michael Volpe. Thank you so much, Michael, for being here today.
Thank you for having me.
You're very welcome. So today, Michael, we are discussing Sandra Grazzini Rucki's case and everything that you're aware of that's been happening to this poor woman.
Right, absolutely. Where did you want me to start? At the beginning?
Yeah, just go ahead and start at the beginning to kind of give some people who maybe don't know or not familiar with her situation a little background.
Right. Well, first of all, I've been a journalist since 2009. Since 2013, that's when I'd really started investigating family court. Mm-hmm. I was originally introduced to Sandra's story by her attorney, Michelle McDonald, her divorce attorney. She had several attorneys all throughout, but and Michelle had helped me edit that book, Bullied to Death. But as part of her representation of Sandra, she was forced to conduct part of a custody trial while handcuffed to a wheelchair with no notes, computer, glasses, and her client had been removed. And that's just one microcosm of what is so much corruption in one case, that it's a sea of corruption. Mm-hmm. And, as remarkable as that scene is, and that's exactly what happened, it's actually on video that Michelle is handcuffed and conducting this trial. You'll rarely, if ever, someone who's covering this case will mention it. Mm-hmm. Even though it's been covered ad nauseum locally, and 2020 did an entire episode on this case and somehow forgot to mention that during the custody trial, an attorney was forced to conduct part of it handcuffed. And that was one of a million things that happened.
I saw that footage. I remember that very well.
Right. And so part of the reason that Sandra is she goes by Sam, I should know, but her full formal name is Sandra. But part of the reason she's going through this is because of how devastating what 2020 did. And it was rank propaganda, cheap rank propaganda. And in fact, what I found is there's a lot of, not a lot, but there more than just 2020 in terms of what people would refer to as mainstream media, try to protect monstrous people like her ex-husband, David Rucky, and the family court, which protects those monsters. So it's not unique that what would be referred to as mainstream media. And she met David in college, and they eventually got married, and it was very volatile. And he was emotionally abusive probably right from the get-go, but he wasn't physically abusive until about 2 years into the marriage. And some people, those who are misinformed or completely uninformed, or those who don't want to know the truth, believe that there is a question as to whether or not David Rucky was abusive. There is no question. The evidence is overwhelming, and what's even more overwhelming is the evidence of cover-up of this abuse, not only by the courts, but by the media, specifically including 2020. So there are multiple police reports. One of them, he got into a bar fight. Another time, he threatened to kill his in-law. multiple times he threatened to kill his neighbors. One time, in front of about a dozen 2- and 3-year-olds, he screamed uncontrollably, started swearing.
Yeah.
All right? Who has 2- and 3-year-olds or has had kids who are 2 and 3? Do you think it might be inappropriate if somebody swears uncontrollably around them? This is what he did. There was a road rage incident where he bloodied a guy and then went shopping.
Wow.
His son, Nico, who now claims he's never seen his father be violent, when he was 13 years old, told Child Protective Services of an incident where his dad stuck a gun to his head.
Wow.
The same child who now says he's never seen his dad be violent.
Right.
Now he says that now that he's been in his dad's sole custody. So evident, and it goes on, and there are like family functions where he beats people up. All kinds of stuff. He's been convicted multiple times of violent-related offenses. In fact, when he received sole custody, he was on probation for one of his violent-related offenses, and he's had to go to anger management multiple times for the multiple convictions of violence-related offenses. So she endured 20-plus years of physical, verbal, emotional abuse. He cheated on her constantly. There's all kinds of things that he did. Besides that, he gets himself involved in mortgage fraud, welfare fraud, any kind of fraud he can get into, and he gets away with all of it, which is what's remarkable. He right now lives in a mansion. He owns 4 homes and 9 cars, but he also receives public assistance.
Wow.
Think about that. And so this goes, what he does is far beyond what family court is involved in.
Right.
But so she endures this. They start to get divorced. And this is something most people don't know. Within about 3 months, they agree. There's something in divorce called a divorce decree, which is supposed to end the marriage.
Mm-hmm.
The divorce is finalized, divorce decree,
Mm-hmm.
where he got the majority of the assets, but she got physical custody of the kids.
Okay.
And this happened in 2012. Yes. So remember, this saga is going on to 2017, and there's actually a divorce decree, which is largely unknown because, again, the media, which has covered this ad nauseum, never covers that, which supposedly finalized everything. So what happened was David Rucky waited a month until the financial terms were set, and then challenged the rest of the divorce decree, claimed that he had been defrauded. And by the way, this divorce decree that I'm talking about is 11 pages, and that includes the title page and the signature page. And anyone who's seen like court documents, that basically leaves 9 pages. This guy owns a multi-million-dollar trucking firm. Somehow in 9 pages of text, he somehow got defrauded. And he claimed laughably that he was doing a fake divorce, whatever that means. Like,
wow.
I thought we were just faking it, like 2 people would fake a divorce or something.
Right.
As soon as he did that, first of all, for the initial divorce decree, he represented himself. Going forward, he's represented by a woman named Lisa Elliott, who is an attorney, but doesn't necessarily specialize divorce, even though she's really his personal attorney now. And so from that point forward, he's been represented by her, except for like a month. The judge on the divorce was a guy named David Knutson, who was that judge until like 2015. And as soon as the divorce opened up, then suddenly Sandra is being accused of parental alienation.
Right.
So all of the abuse allegations are used against her, if you know how parental alienation works, because the more kids say the father's abusive, the more these parental alienation people say, see, you're putting in their head, and that's why they're saying it.
Right.
So she gets cut out of the kids' lives more. Well, she doesn't even get cut out of the kids' lives. Basically what happens is, in August of 2013, Judge Knutson decides that he needs to appoint a guy named Dr. Paul Reitman to, quote-unquote, diagnose parental alienation. Reitman sees Sam and 4 of her 5 children for less than a half hour, writes a scathing letter basically demanding that Sandra be removed from her children's lives. And on September 5, so keep in mind, he's appointed at the end of August. He meets with her once, and by September 5, there's a hearing. But it's not really a hearing because it's called a telephonic conference. And I read the transcript, and No one's ever called as a witness. There's no testimony taken. What basically happens is, and here's who attends this conference: David Rucky's attorney, Sandra Grazzini Rucki's then attorney, the guardian ad litem appointed to the case, and that's it, and the judge. Sandra Grazzini Rucki wasn't there, David Rucky wasn't there, and even Paul Reitman, who wrote the letter that made this conference happen, he wasn't there. And at this conference, they decided that Sandra should be removed from her home, David Rucky's sister should move into the home, and the kids now be taken care of by David Rucky's sister. Wow. So when you do something like that, I'm sure nothing bad will happen, right? I mean, if you remove the primary caretaker from 5 children's lives and put in an aunt that they barely know, I'm sure that's going to work out all right.
I wanted to say this too, Michael, because when you talk about the parental alienation and how they've so battered and abused that term, but the thing is that I say this constantly in my interviews. They're alienating a parent, so they're causing the very thing that they're claiming is a crime. They're actually committing a crime when they do that by taking out a primary caretaker. So the term itself is a correct term. However, it's used in a conundrum. I mean, it really makes no sense why they do that. Their remedy for your quote-unquote undiagnosed parental alienation.
Parental alienation is to create new parental alienation.
Well, is actually, and this is why the people that use that terminology from my investigations and from my, in interviews, they're truly being alienated by from their children, and their children are truly being alienated from them. So we try to reiterate it as the definition of what the term really is, not in the manner in which the courts abuse it. Does that make sense?
That absolutely makes sense. And there's actually, in 2013, local Fox, so the Fox affiliate in that area in Minneapolis, did a story on this, and Reitman was interviewed, and Reitman said, what's the alternative that at 12 or 13 these kids can say, I'm going to end my relationship with my dad? I think it was, he said it.
Yeah.
And what's ironic to Dr. Reitman is Sandra Grazzini Rucki hasn't seen her children since 2013.
It's disgusting.
So if you're saying that you needed to do this to make sure the child had a relationship with the parent, why has that child not had a relationship with the mother? So you're absolutely right. And in this case, there's a really remarkable quote that sort of encapsulates what you're saying. My biggest problem with parental alienation is it really doesn't necessarily have any one definition. It's almost like what Judge Brandeis said with porn. Mm-hmm. Well, I can't define it, but I know what it is when I see it. And I don't think with such a term that you want to use that. But you sort of know what it means, but when you get into like a specific example, it's hard to determine. Right. And so that's really, I think, the problem. But you're absolutely right. It is abused, and the court actually creates the very parental alienation that they claim to be trying to fix.
Well, they call it junk science. However, it's junk science when they're falsely diagnosing a mother. In most cases, it's a mother under abuse. Now, don't get me wrong, because there's high volumes of fathers that have been alienated for no reason that don't deserve it. Okay, it's always the criminal types that get the children. But so they're just pushing it off as it's unfair to diagnose it that way because of the fact that so many people are being alienated genuinely, causing all kinds of illnesses, emotional, mental health problems, and then physical problems, and then years and years of compounded issues to families. So it's not quote unquote junk science unless it's done by the courts, which actually are alienating parents and children from one another that should be together.
I would say that the quote unquote professionals like the Reitmans of the world, he's junk science. Certainly everyone in this particular story was using it in a junk science way. And there were others. By the way, I should note, just for reference, the first person to accuse her, I guess formally, of parental alienation was a woman named Julie Friedrich, who was the guardian ad litem on the case, but a non-practicing attorney. How exactly is she even qualified to make such an accusation? And that's where, so if it starts with an unqualified, non-practicing attorney, what does that say about the entire process?
I
so
see this,
basically, on September 7th, 2012, Sandra's removed from her home, where her lawyer calls her and says, "You've got 3 hours or they're going to put you in jail. Leave now." She leaves. Her kids run to the police station. 4 of them wind up living with her sister. One of them, Nico, who now, again, claims there's no abuse, lived with his paternal aunt. That continues until April 19th, 2013. The 2 oldest daughters are tricked into going to the police station, where they are told they're now going to be living with their paternal aunt. They're driven with a police escort to their paternal aunt. They spend about 20 or 30 minutes there. They run away. They call their mom. Their mom hides them at a camp for abused children run by Doug and Gina Dowland. And she thought it would be a few days before she got custody back. She never got custody back. The 2 girls were safe for 2.5 years. Meanwhile, the custody continued. And as I mentioned in the introduction, after the girls ran away on April 19, 2013, Judge David Knutson held a custody trial. Remember, only 3 kids out of the 5 are even in custody, and he holds a trial. The trial goes for one, and on the eve of the trial, Michelle McDonald, Sandra's then attorney, sued him, a bunch of other people, for like $500 million in federal court, and said, "Since I'm suing you, please recuse yourself from this case." You know what he told? And by the way, do you know that if you think a judge has a conflict, the judge has to agree with you that they have a conflict?
Absolutely, but they never do it because they're a bunch of sick liars. But yes, absolutely. They say they have this complete and utter immunity, but when people really research the laws, that is not true. Not true. It's an abuse of system.
Right. So in this case, Judge David Knutson decides that he doesn't have a conflict. He holds a day's hearing. Sandra testifies. They go to Michelle's office. And then at the end of the hearing, he said, "No, we're canceling the second day." Then they go to Michelle's office. They're in Michelle's office at like 10 in the evening. Michelle gets a fax. Hearing is back on. And by the way, all of the evidence of abuse you have, we're marking it from the record. We're not letting you use it. Michelle goes back for the second day. She's in the middle of cross-examining the guardian ad litem. And despite having all of that put on her, she's still kicking butt. So then at that point, they take a break. Michelle is ushered into the back by the county sheriffs who are doing security for the court. Sandra is told that the hearing is over. Your attorney is being booked as we speak. Michelle is then never told why she's brought in the back. She's put into the wheelchair, handcuffed. They then wheel her back in. Knutson goes, "Something must have happened." And he said, "Either you continue in this state," and by the way, this is in his own order, "or you're in default." Makes the attorney continue handcuffed. And then this happens September 11, 2013. 3 months later, he awards David Rucky sole custody. And the only way that Sandra can see her kids is after like 5 years of mental health evaluations. So that's 2013. So, and by the way, he also awarded David Rucky the house, all of the assets. So in this divorce, David Rucky got 100% of the marital assets, sole custody, no visitation, plus alimony and child support.
This is unbelievable. I can't even thank you enough for telling America this story and telling the truth about it, because it's very annoying when you see, and I know it, I can spot the red flags from 50 miles away when a child first is fearful, and then after this whole family court baloney ordeal, suddenly they're quote unquote, "Oh, the child's not afraid." Yeah, sure they aren't. They're more afraid of what's going to happen to them next than they are of telling the truth.
Right. Well, first of all, if a child repeatedly says they're being abused and no one listens to them, and then they stop saying it,
exactly,
does that mean the abuse stopped, or did the child learn that if they talk about abuse, that only bad things happen?
Right.
So that's number one. Number two, I should mention that their trucking company routinely made several $1 million per year, and that's in income, not gross, net. Number two, he has the home he lives is in Lakeville, Minnesota. Lakeville is one of the premier, like very well-to-do suburbs. $500,000 to $1 million of that home. He owns 4 homes, 9 classic cars, multi-million-dollar business, and out of that, he got 100%. Sole custody, child support, and alimony. And the child support is based on a figure that's twice as much as Sandra ever made.
Well, and let me tell you, I have the majority of patterns of abuse against mothers and children as victims or re-victimized by domestic violence. Guess what state it comes out of? Minnesota. Minnesota is the worst that I've actually seen, and they're all there's horrible in so many states, but Minnesota, and it doesn't matter if they're dirt poor or if they're loaded with money, they are attacking viciously the sanctity of mother and children there in Minnesota. Very clearly, I have such templates of patterns of abuse there you wouldn't even believe. So
right, and this guy Knudsen is one, but I think that they actually probably have some sort of a textbook that they've written behind the scenes to do this, because what he was doing was very like systematic textbook. So he receives all of that, and the kids are still missing. And so basically one of her advocates wound up talking to the press and re-energized the investigation.
Okay.
And so the first thing that happened is a reporter named Brandon Stahl from the Minneapolis Star-Tribune. He didn't tell his audience this, but he received a sealed arrest warrant for Sandra Grazzini Rucki. Sealed.
Oh, sorry.
All right. So even though he didn't technically do anything wrong, if someone's willing to give him a sealed warrant, you've got to be curious. Why is he getting a sealed warrant? Because whoever did give it to him was completely illegal. Whoever was leaking it to him. It's not to the same level, but it's basically the stuff that's being leaked about Trump. A lot of that stuff is coming from an illegal leak. Like, you're not allowed to give the press that kind of stuff. But it's the same thing here. He writes a big splashy article, which makes it suggest that she's now a fugitive, even though it's a sealed warrant, so she can't be a fugitive. So in October of 2015, the version of the SWAT team, that Special Weapons and Tactics of the U.S. Marshals, shows up to a timeshare she was staying in, and she's a flight attendant after a flight, after midnight, with 4 rifles. They initially put the person staying there with her, who just happened to be there because they took the same flight, because they were working the same flight, not took the same flight, they were working the same flight. They put him stomach first on the ground with 4 rifles to his head. They handcuff him behind his back, sit him on the couch. Then they wake Sam up. They drag her out of bed with rifles pointing to her head. Then they start screaming, "Where are the girls? Where are the guns? Or where are the kids? Where are the guns?" And she's like, "I don't know what you're talking about." And suddenly they go, "There's just 2 flight bags." And then another one goes, "But we were told that there are children here." There are no children. So they executed a federal warrant. Supposedly she is being charged with child trafficking, gun running, and kidnapping. Except that Dakota County, which is the ones who initially told them about the warrant, were now not willing to sign it. So the U.S. Marshals, even though they had no one who was signing the warrant, still put her in jail.
Oh, my God.
Did not tell anyone that she really wasn't being charged with gun running, kidnapping, and child trafficking. So as a result, she wound up in a cell with a woman named Elizabeth Rios, who was on trial for murder, facing potentially the death penalty, who said, "Why are you here? You're not supposed to be here. I'm not supposed to be allowed to be with someone like you."
Right,
She's
right,
there
absolutely.
for 2.5 weeks.
Why are they? Oh my God! I mean, this woman's going to sit next to Jesus in heaven. Holy moly!
Right. Wait. So she goes. Then she's picked up by prison transport. She's stopped at like 7 different prisons. The whole time she's shackled with her legs and her hands shackled together and made to sit in a separate cage because they were told that she's a special case. Finally, after she begged them to look her up, they gave her they didn't give her all the restrictions. She gets back to Minnesota. They drop all those charges. They then charge her with deprivation of parental rights, which is if you're in a divorce and you're supposed to have custody time with your kids and you don't, then the other party can be charged, which is much less severe than child trafficking, gun running, and all of that.
Gee, I'd say.
She faces a judge who is the judge, David Knudsen, who recuses himself with written instructions for another judge. This other judge holds a hearing at 9 a.m. while telling her attorney, Michelle McDonald, to show up at 11 a.m. and imposes $1 million cash bond on her bail without her attorney there.
Oh my God.
So then they proceed to the trial. 2020 starts working on the case. Suddenly they go, we're releasing Sandra Grazzini Rucki. They're not ready in time. So now they release her on their own recognizance.
Mm-hmm.
So then 2020 comes out, and it's as big a hatchet job as you're ever going to get.
Mm-hmm.
2020 was given 42 pages of police reports of David Rucky, and then told their audience they received no police reports. And one of the things they did was they said, are there any police reports of physical abuse from during the marriage? Now, Sam said yes, but that's a very complicated question, one. Two, the question implies that if you didn't call the cops while you were married, then the abuse must not be real.
Right.
Now, if that's the case, then that must mean that Ike Turner never beat up Tina Turner, because Tina Turner never went to the cops. But I don't think Elizabeth Vargas, who was the host, would ever look Tina Turner in the eye and said, are there any police reports of physical abuse from your marriage to Ike? Oh, well, then I don't think he beat you up. I don't think she'd ever say that to Tina. So now I guess if you've sold 50 million records, you get the benefit of the doubt and something like that. But if you're a flight attendant and a mom, I guess you don't get the benefit of the doubt. So what they did was, in a very tricky way, they committed propaganda, claiming and pretending like there's no evidence of abuse when really there is, and then suggesting she's just crazy because we didn't find any evidence of abuse. And then when they were confronted with it, they made up a series of excuses to me. All right. So like when I said, hey, but what about what their neighbors said? Well, that's what their neighbors. And I said, well, what about what their in-law says? Well, that's their in-laws. I was like, what about the bar fight? Well, that's the bar fight. I was like, yes, each individual time.
Right.
But how about together? You know, the guy beats up bar patrons, neighbors, in-laws, motorists, and you're saying he doesn't beat up the people he sees the most? Are you kidding? And then I said, what about the CPS report? Well, that's not a police report. What about this police report? Well, this is right after the marriage. Do you understand? There's all of this evidence, and they were looking for this one specific thing, suggesting that if you don't call the cops when you're married, and oh, by the way, in one of the police reports from right after the marriage ended, she told the cops, he's done this before, but I was afraid to call the cops because of what he would do when he came back.
Of course.
So why did you ask her if there are any police reports? And by the way, they claimed they had all the police reports. They just didn't think any of the rest of them were important. They claimed this after the program ended. They didn't say, they never in the program said there are a lot of police reports, just none of physical abuse from during the marriage. They never even said there were any police reports.
I know. I watched it. I was livid.
Right. So then her criminal trial goes on. And so what the judge does, and her name is Karen Asfog, and there's a YouTube video going around of Karen Asfog sentencing her, and she's emotional, and she's saying how great a guy David Rucky is, and the father's rights people all over this.
Yeah,
you are all celebrating one of the most corrupt judges in American history.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a mountain of abuse. So what does Judge Asfog say? The Child Protective Services reports are out. Nothing about the divorce, that's out. No police reports, nothing. There was one incident where he sat his family around the kitchen table and threatened to kill them all. And then days later, he called his daughter's cell phone and left a voicemail with six bullets being shot. And she would only allow the voicemail if it said inaudible sound. So you were supposed to say you didn't know what it is. All right. So basically all of the evidence of abuse, she didn't allow it in. And then they found her guilty. And then everybody's like, look, jury of your peers. And what people don't know is jury of your peers, it's a set-up trial. People think if someone gets found guilty, that must mean that they heard the evidence and found it out. like we have justice. People think we have justice, so obviously if someone was found guilty, then they must be guilty, and they don't look into it.
Right.
And at the same, and by the way, while the trial was ongoing, they also made her do her child support. So while her criminal trial was ongoing, her attorney was doing custody in the same building, not in the same room. But
right.
Imagine they're in different buildings.
Right.
And then a process server shows up to David Rucky, hands him a subpoena for his daughter, who's under 18. He walks out of the room, threatens the process server with a fight, then walks back in the room, threatens Michelle McDonald while his wife's trial is going on, while his wife is suggesting that he's too violent to take care of the kids. He threatens 2 people in the courthouse. They do police reports, nothing happens. Again, he always gets away with everything. So then after she's found guilty while she's in jail, they order her to pay $975 a month in child support, and they do it retroactive to 2013, so she's now 15 grand behind.
No, this is
she has 6 felonies, she has no job. They took away everything. Even if she found work, all of her money would go to David Rucky. Right now, she has to live in hiding. And because of what 2020 did, because of the Fathers' Rights Movement, and specifically the group, the Fathers' Rights Movement, which is leading the way in being the mouthpiece for David Rucky, there's a lot of people who think she deserves it. So let her live in complete poverty on the streets. She has no home. She's moved round. People take care of her. She can't work. She can't find a job. She can't do anything. And there are a lot of people you talk to. Yeah, she deserves it. She hit her kids. Yeah, she hit her kids from a monster.
And the thing is, let's talk a little sense here. Let's talk a little logic. Let's hope that the thing that's between most of our ears works in the viewing audience, right? Let's pretend this woman. Let's just pretend that this woman with a prior clean background, with a background that didn't have any moral issues that prior to all of this, hit her kids. She went nuts one day and she just hit her children for some bizarre reason that nobody can find. So we're going to abuse this woman by doing this damage to her, and we're going to abuse these children to teach her a lesson. I mean, you know what I'm saying? It is the most absurd, insane thing. These judges, I talk about this all the time. We need to have mandated at least 4 times a year, and not by their choosing, by the people's choice, mandated mental health evaluations on anybody who sits in the position of a judge. Number one. And if they come close to failing it, they need to be removed. We're seeing judges now past the age of 70 on the bench. Okay? Now, judges should never be able to make any type of a custody decision in a 4-minute hearing or trial where they change the course of people's lives. There has to be, and I agree with jury trials, but like you say, I agree with what you're saying as well, because things are missing. Obviously, there was not a proper evidence-based, even though they quote unquote did this, there was not a proper evidence-based trial held for this woman, because everything was all one-sided. Everything was all, you can see it.
Can I add something to that?
Please do.
What happened in
this your lighting just changed drastically, and it's affecting the camera. I don't know what happened. I'm sorry. Okay, I'm going to put something up different right now, though. It's okay. You could go ahead. I'll just put her face up for now.
That's better. Wow. Okay. All right. You shouldn't have done that then. Okay.
That's okay. Yeah, I have.
Wow, the light just came right in. Okay, I see it.
I have a picture of Sandra up right now for people to see. So.
Okay. So can I just add something?
Yes, please do.
This case, this is so what was done in her trial is technically not allowed. By the way, besides hiding evidence, there was jury tampering, there was witness tampering.
That's what I mean. It's all the jury tampering.
Right. Her daughter was interviewed by the cops a month before her mother's trial, and her daughter Samantha, who then wound up testifying. Let me explain how she testified. So her daughter tells the cops, well, my dad and my aunt made me come here, and they told me I have to recant, and that's the way it's going to be. And I started to cry. All right.
Wow.
So that's the so-called victim and his sister tampering with a witness. Mm-hmm. And then the cop, her name was Kelly Coughlin. She's from the Lakeville Police Department. She goes, oh, well, I just wanted to make sure nobody was making you come here. And she's like, well, I just told you. I'm sure she was thinking, actually, that's exactly what I just told you. And then there was jury tampering. They allowed members of the press to walk up to the jury and ask them if they wanted to answer any questions.
Right.
The whole trial was absurd, but all of this stuff you would think would then get taken over on appeal. In this particular case, they have an appeals court judge named Jill Flaskamp-Halbrooks who assigns herself to each one of Sandra's cases and then writes bogus law to justify what these trial judges are doing.
Yep.
So she's been the appeals judge, not just on her family court case, but now on her criminal case. She's the one who upheld that she should pay $975 a month. Basically, the way they did it was Rucky claimed that he had given up his business and put it in his sister's name, and he now only made $5,000 a month, and it wasn't enough, even though he had millions, even though doing something like that is clear evidence of fraud. And she said, well, it doesn't matter how much money he has, it only matters how much money he makes. And it's also based on what, no, it doesn't matter how much money he has, it doesn't matter how much money he makes, it only matters how much money I think the child support parent should make. And since I think you should be able to make enough to pay the $975 a month, I'm going to affirm the previous decision. And she's done that throughout. When she was removed from her home forcibly on September 7th, when that was appealed by Michelle McDonald, the same Jill Flaskamp-Halbrooks said, well, it's a temporary order. Do you see how she's going through like legal gymnastics to justify any ruling as long as it goes against her, whether civilly or criminally? And that's how they pull this off. You don't need law if you have all of the levers of the judiciary who will make it law. And that's basically what's happened in this case. And another thing, she had no money, so she was given a public defender for her appeal. And the public defender refused to say anything about all the evidence that was not allowed in, the jury tampering, the witness tampering, almost everything. She was forced to submit her own appeal. And then even though she begged him, he refused to do oral arguments, even though if your client instructs you to do something, you actually have to do it.
Absolutely.
You don't have a choice.
You don't have a choice.
No, I know better than you. No, it doesn't matter whether you know better.
They can advise you, but they're not supposed to. Right.
Oral arguments. You do oral arguments.
I hope these people are. I hope you guys are watching here. I hope you guys are watching and taking notes, because everything I've been saying, he's reiterating right here. And
that appeals attorney is Stephen Russ.
But there's no reason this woman should be living her life like a caged animal, living her life this way. All her civil liberties violated all over the place, and her children in danger. It's an utter disgrace. It really is.
Right, and people are sitting back, and why? Because of 2020, because of the fathers' rights movement, specifically the movement,
the movement itself,
group.
Right?
They're all useful idiots. These people in the fathers' rights movement, they see a video, and it's hilarious. Like, the video says, mother convicted of parental alienation. Well, parental alienation is not a crime, so she couldn't have been convicted of it. And then you are basically a mouthpiece for one of the most corrupt judges, Karen Asfog, in the history of America. Like, you don't know anything about the case. You don't know that she wouldn't allow all this evidence in. And then you hear David Rucky, a jury of your peers convicted you. She lets him say that. She makes sure none of the evidence comes in, and then she lets him say that. And that's why it happens, because you've got a large swath of the public who actually believes she's the villain here. And that in order for something like that to happen, you have to have a massive amount of corruption and cover-up, but also media propaganda. Look, I hate the term fake news, because this is really more propaganda, and all of it is, really. And starting with 2022, the Star Tribune, Brandon Stahl, I should mention, Brandon Stahl was later on given another sealed arrest warrant. So he's had two sealed warrants given to him by law enforcement. But that's what's going on. You have a lot of media who are basically supporting this, and that's why she has to live on the street.
It's horrible, and this is what people are asking. Will Sandra be in this interview? Did you want to touch on that? You kind of did through the whole episode, but
right. She only gets the phone at certain times, and I have a way to reach her, but I couldn't reach her.
Okay, yeah, but Sandra's given free. He's got free speech to tell her story, and obviously it's a public story. But we just
Right,
want
and
to let.
hopefully you'll be able to get her on, but it's very hit and miss.
Right, right. We're gonna work
You know,
on that for
I
sure.
don't know where she is. I don't want to know where she is, and I don't know. I can't explain exactly how it works with her phone. I just
No,
know
but
that
that's
sometimes
okay.
she
We
has
don't
one,
we don't need
sometimes she
to.
doesn't.
Yeah, we just want to keep her safe, basically, until we can get her out of this.
If you wanna do something, call some of the people in charge. There's the public affairs officer for the Minnesota courts. His name is Bo Berenson, BAUBRENTSON. I think it's Bo.Berenson at courts.state.mn.us. Send him an email and ask how this can happen. The prosecutor's office is Dakota County. Call them. Call the governor. Say, I heard a story where a woman is on the street. She has no home. Her ex-husband has like 4 homes and 9 cars, and apparently you and the rest of the politicians in your state think she's the villain.
Hold on one second. Speaking of that, guys, as you know, right now we are in the process of drafting a complaint against the state of Minnesota because of all the people that we've been working with. And we've been requesting of you guys to please contact Melanie Lindman. If you can't find her, go to my friends list. She's collecting all the information from you and all the information that Michael just gave you. If you guys would make those phone calls, we would greatly appreciate it. But we also want your stories, and we will include Sandra's into the complaint that we're drafting because it is one crazy state. I'm going to go right back to Michael here.
Right, and I can, you should also send emails to 2020, elizabeth.a.vargas@abc.com. The producer, there were 2, Sean Dooley, sean.dooley@abc.com, and beth.a.mullen@abc.com. And especially if you have this complaint drafted, you should send it to them. And the president of ABC is Channing Dungey, channing.dungey, D-U-N-G-E-Y, at abc.com. And ask them if it's fair the way they presented. The show is called Footprints in the Snow. If we got 1 second, can I tell you how bogus that show is? It's called Footprints in the Snow because they claim that when the girls ran on April 19th, 2013, all they left was footprints in the snow.
Wow.
April 19th,
wow.
Even in Minnesota. By the way, I did look it up. Less than an inch of snow. There were no footprints. There was no snow. It was April 19th. The show is so bogus. Even the title is bogus.
It says a lot about it, doesn't it? Footprints in the snow. Wow. Wow, wow, wow. Well, this is the reason.
Look, if you saw the blizzard. Mm-hmm. There was no blizzard. It was April 19th.
Mm-hmm.
You would have remembered if there was a blizzard anywhere in the U.S. on April 19th.
I had not yet started this TV show, Punished for Protecting, until, what was it now? I'm trying to remember. When did we start this? What are we in? We're in October? Mm-hmm. September. I want to say the end of August it started, I think. I'm going to have to go back and check. It's been a whirlwind since because I never anticipated the outrageous amount of overwhelming responses, and it's so horrible to know that this is a global psychopathic issue. But I do recall watching this, and I remember all the red flags went up. I knew right away it was a bunch of BS. I knew it. And then the interviews that I've been doing actually for close to 10 years prior to the show, you know right away. You know right away because it's almost like you can smell
There was one tell that David Rucky gave when Vargas said, "Do you have anger issues?" And he said, "No, I get frustrated." And that's right out of that's from the abuser's handbook because that's how in their mind they justify their abuse.
Yeah.
See, I wouldn't have had to hit her if she didn't frustrate me so much.
Let me tell you something. I know a lot of very good fathers who have genuinely have women in their lives or were in their lives, mothers of their children that have serious issues that are not safe to be around children, literally. And they would never in a million years, ever in a million years, take the children away from that mother. They would do anything they can. It would be in a safeguarded situation. But so if you're not an abuser, that's not in you. But if you are an abuser, that is in you. Do you understand what I'm saying? Because there's still, and people may get offended if I say this, but if a woman is being beat the crap out of by a man twice her size, okay, and I don't blame that woman to not want to be around that man, okay, and if a man is being the crap out of by a woman, if it happens, if somehow, some miracle, some man is actually less stronger than a woman, I have not yet to meet one. Matter of fact, my little 10-year-old son is stronger than me, but and he's a little guy. But my point is that, and I'm not demeaning anybody who's been genuinely abused in male form, okay, because it does happen. But
Right.
when I hear these things where women are forced to be around their abusers with a wealth of evidence, I have to say to myself, what the hell is wrong with you, and how are you in this position of authority? And how dare you have on your courts and in your billboards that this is Domestic Violence Month and that you defend that? You do? How do you defend it? Do you do?
That makes me sick.
I mean, come on.
There's a great, not a great, but there's a story. One of the stories I'm more proud of. Angela Hickman, her ex was actually convicted of abusing her, of being violent towards her.
Mm-hmm.
And she was told, you have to do therapy with him or we'll take your kids away from you.
That's what they do.
She told them, I can't. They took her kids away from her.
Yeah, they need it. There needs to be a serious overhaul. So,
Right.
well, I thank you so much. Thank you really from the bottom of my heart, because this story has to be told in the truth, and I'm so thankful that you've done that. And
Can
that
I add one quick thing that I forgot? On 2020,
Yes.
David Rucky claimed, I want the children's mother to be in their lives. He actually said that if you go watch the program.
Oh, wow.
Since then, he, on behalf of his children, some of which are over 18, so none of this is technically legal, has taken out a lifetime restraining order. In
Wow.
fact, the restraining order that forbids her from seeing her grandchildren. Completely
Oh, my
illegal, done by Karen
God.
Asfog. This is the same judge who, the father's rights movement, what a hero, look at her cry, on behalf of David Rucky. That's right. To the millions of people watching 2020, they think there's going to be a mother in those kids' lives. In reality, lifetime restraining order signed off on by Judge Karen Asfog.
Wow, unbelievable.
And the story
Unbelievable.
just keeps getting worse.
It's I mean, Lifetime Movie Network needs this one. I mean, this is
Right.
off the charts. Off the charts. Well, thank you so much, Michael. Is there any way that people can offer any support or maybe even some financial help through you to her or anything like that? Is there something we can do?
It's very hard to offer her financial support. If you want to support her, I can give you dozens of emails, but email the people I email. That'll take you a minute. And it's a lot, it depends on how many. Look,
Okay.
people always think, well, how does that help? By email. It depends on if yours is the only one.
Right.
If you're one of 100 or 1,000 or 10,000, it'll make a difference.
Right. Well, I mean, this will, yeah, the
And
thousands of
then
people
look,
will
if
see.
you're like, I'm not from Minnesota, believe me, if you're from Arizona, make sure they know, because they're getting emails from Minnesota and other states, and you want them to know, hey, I'm in Arizona and I know what you're doing. I know what you're up
Right. Right.
to. So that's the way you can help. It's hard to get her money. She has no access to anything really.
Right.
So, the best way to support her is to spread her story, and anybody spreading misinformation, you challenge them. And there is an overwhelming amount of evidence this guy abused his family. He abused everyone. He still does. He abuses everyone. The whole story is
Now,
abuse.
do we have a picture of him? Is there a way I can get a picture up of him? If you can
Oh,
send
yeah.
it.
If you
Go ahead and if you can send it to me.
I don't know if you can do it on the spot, but if you Google his name,
Would you be
there's-
able to? Are you available to do that right now, or no? Or can you? Let me just see if I can try to do this
it would
myself.
take me a little while. but
Okay,
yeah, I
we've
can
got
get
her
you-
on the screen. He's David, correct?
Yeah.
Let me just. I'll be able to pull this up. Let's get a good look at this guy.
Kind of looks like Patty Heaton's husband.
I remember him from the.
Yeah, if you know.
I remember him from the interview. I've got one shot of him up right now.
Mhm.
I'd like to get some. I'd like to get some footage of him. Or not footage. Some of his criminal history. I'd like to have with his innocent mannerisms.
The criminal history, I'll send you a 99-page dossier on all of his violence.
Yeah, why don't we get that, because we can actually have that edited into this piece for TV version. And
Yeah.
I would like, yeah, we could have that put right in. I'll have my girl do that for me. That needs to be seen because
I'll send you, there's it's police reports, court documents, HRO applications, there's letters, there's a bunch of different things. It's like a potpourri, and it's 99 pages. It's not 99 incidents, but it's so many. By the end, it's so many incidents.
Mhm.
Like who could be the subject of a 99-page dossier of violence? Like if somebody tried to document my violence, it'd be like 4 pages. Okay? So, I mean,
if they try to document my violence, there'd be no pages, 0.
Yeah.
Unless violence against the court counts, I don't know.
So okay, so we're done. I'll send you
Yeah,
the
thank you so
link to it.
Yeah, send me that, and we will get on that. And again, thank you so much. We really appreciate this interview today. Thank you, and we will clearly stay in touch. Thank you. Okay, so there you have it. And as soon as I get that information, it'll be edited into this piece, and I will post that for everybody to see. Thank you guys. Please, respond to those emails that Michael gave, so that we can help her as best as possible. And remember, by helping her, we're helping to be a voice for our entire country. As you know, this is a global epidemic, but we really need to continue this fight, and your voice does matter. So don't think you're the only one doing it, but also don't think that, oh, other people will do it, so I don't have to. Please rewatch this, take down the notes, get those emails, send those letters in, inundate them with these emails, okay, guys? Please get it out there for them to see that we're keeping a watchful eye on what they're doing to this poor woman. Have a heart, think about it. She's representative of all of us, okay? What's happened to her is representative of all of us. She's your voice, okay? We are each other's voice, and she needs to know that she's getting that support from everybody. So please get those emails immediately out, and thank you very much. And if you want to be on our show, guys, listen, the website again is punish4beingaparent.com, but go to the networking page. That's the best way. I also posted a video on there for those of you that are writing me. It's very simple. Go on the page, Punish for Protecting National Advocacy Networking Group. There is a whole status there of all the states. There's a video instructional there. That's where you put your information, okay? And hope to see you at the meet and greet this October 21st, Saturday, all day at 11 o'clock in front of, it looks like the weather's going to be great, so in front of the White House. You'll be able to touch base with me via chat. And on Facebook, I'll leave messages so you guys can find me, find our team. We have a nice group of our advocates that are coming already. I'm very excited about that. Camera crew there, and we will be taking your live interviews right there at the meet and greet. I look so forward to meeting all of you. God bless you all, and have a great day.